All right, so we last left our heroes here at a straight sequence diagram. And as a little Easter egg for you, in between these two particular videos, I actually went to see the latest Trolls movie on a kid's birthday party in a movie theater. So that was quite a psychedelic experience. But anyway, back to this. So this is a straight sequence. And what we're going to do now is deal with the next example they give us. Oops, not that example, this example, the selection. So up till now, we just did a sequential. That's what we did on page 17. We did a sequential, which is basically blah, 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 do all this, right? That's the pseudocode, and I didn't make as big of a deal on this, but I suppose that pseudocode is being translated into actual code right there. There's the print, all right? And so that was the diagram that we did. And then over here in Python Anywhere is where I've got the code. It's not an exact match, but it's close enough. And then down here, I also had the idle thing going on as well. Now I'm going to stay here. I'm pretty well just going to stay in Python Anywhere for this one because I want to make reference in this program, and in the next one, I want to start really talking about line numbers and stuff. So I prefer to stay here. Okay, so what's going on between the sequential, which is what we had there, and the selection? The selection is going to be basically if it's gluten-free, clean the toaster first. So there's a little bit of a selection. It's either going to be this or it's going to be this. Now, there is actually a symbol for that in our flow chart, and that symbol is this one. It's called a decision here, but it's accurate. It's a selection. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to deviate a bit here, but what I'm going to do here is I'm going to basically say, is eater gluten free? Okay, so is eater gluten free? And then I got to think about it. Well, what am I going to do with that? So if the eater is not gluten free, we can just go ahead and go right along down the rest of this, right? We don't need to make any change at all in our processing. So basically, one day I'm going to figure this out. Right there, I'm going to put him there. Let's see, can I shrink him a little bit? Yes, I can. Good job. All right. So is the person gluten-free? Now, if they're not, well, how do you indicate that? Well, there is actually up here in the basic general set, a little bit of text. And I can basically down here, text right there. And I can move this guy up. Okay, I must have done it already. And let's assume that they're not. So if they are not gluten-free, then we just go ahead and do what we were going to do, right? Now, that's awesome, but that's not really what happens if they are gluten-free. Well, if we look back at our pseudocode, if they're gluten-free, we got to clean the toaster first. All right, so they're gluten-free, we got to clean the toaster first. So that is our dude here. So we're going to go copy, and we go paste, move over. And so if they are gluten-free, so then we're going to clean toaster, just clean toaster. Okay, and then do that little line. I hope, again, you're appreciating the whole copy-paste thing, because that definitely speeds up your development. Make that a yes. So if they are gluten-free, we clean the toaster first, and that's kind of what it's saying here. Now, it does say put the gluten-free sliced bread in the toaster. All right, so let's go back here. So we're not going to put bread in the toaster, and maybe I could change it to be wheat bread, but anyway. So this is going to be put, and I'm just going to abbreviate here, gluten-free bread in the toaster. Great. Now, do we still push the lever down? And here's where I think I'm going to deviate a little bit from the book. I'm definitely going to deviate a little bit from the book, because basically it looks like either way, we're going to be pushing the level down. We're going to wait for the toast to pop up and we're going to get the toast. So I think at this point now, what we can probably do is rejoin. Wow, that was really cool. Rejoin the main path. Okay, you're just gonna keep doing that to me. That's fine. That's fine. That's fine. You keep doing that. So just do that. Do this, and then we're gonna take this and bring him to that, and bring him over there like that. All right. Yeah. There you go. That is what they call a selection, but it's also it's a decision. So is the person gluten-free? Yes. Then we got to clean the toaster, put gluten-free bread back in. Then we go back here, we push the thing down, we wait for the toast, and then we get the toast. If they're not, then whoosh, we just do what we're normally going to do. All right. That's kind of a neat little take on it. One other thing, well, actually, good enough. That's what we'll do for now. All right, so let's go now and look at my program and see how we could implement that in the program. It might help you if you actually have this particular program in front of your face. I've kind of got my version of it up here. I'm going to be making a couple changes, but this will give you a sense as to what's going on if you have that in front of your face. So we get the bread. By the way, you know, what really helps too is if you have that diagram up as well. But anyway, okay. So we get the bread, we put the bread in the toaster, and then what's going on here is it gluten-free? How in the world do we figure that out? Well, what they're doing in that example is they are using something called a variable. Now we have a section coming up that will talk about variables more fully, but I will at this point try to introduce this idea. Okay, so I'm going to basically create a variable called gluten free, and it's a variable, and I'm going to assign it. Now I'm going to assign it 0. All right, I'm going to assign it 0. We're going to get the bread. And now the question is, is it gluten-free? Well, here's what I'm going to basically say. I'm going to say if the gluten-free variable is 1, then we are now free to basically put the bread in the toaster. All right, we're going to put the bread in the toaster. And I will talk about the indenting and all that in a minute. Otherwise, wait a minute, sorry. Whoa, gluten-free 1. So let me try it again. Sorry. If they are not gluten-free. So basically 0, in traditional world, 0 typically means it's not, 1 typically means it is. We're going to go beyond that. But anyway, so if they're not gluten-free, we're going to put the bread in the toaster, and then we're just going to carry on the way it is. Otherwise, we're going to print clean toaster, print, put, put whatever, gluten-free bread in toaster. All right, so we get all that going, and then let's just run it and see whether I got my syntax right here. All right, so gluten-free is a variable. It is set to 0. So what's a variable? At this level, all I'm going to tell you is that a variable is a piece of the memory of your system that's only really alive for the duration of the run of the program. Okay, so I tell you what, just hang on a second. So here's my special effects for you. So this, you got to imagine, this little movable whiteboard is all the memory that this particular script is using. And what happens now is that when I run the program and it hits line 2, which is gluten-free, what it does is on this piece of memory, it grabs a little chunk of it, calls it gluten-free, and then sets it to 0. The program then runs, and then when it's finished, well, this whole thing goes away. All right, so that's kind of the way you should think about variables in memory for now. If I'm using Python anywhere, but if you're using idle, it's really obvious at that point. You know, once you shut down idle, it's gone for good. Let's just have a quick peek, by the way, and say, do you know what gluten-free is? Watch it. There, let's go gluten-free. So right now, in this piece of memory that this guy is using, there's a chunk of it called gluten-free, which was set to 0. If I was to leave this, and actually, oh, by the way, that was horrible. Let me just quickly go copy. Let's come back down to here, and let's spell exit properly. It's a pretty old word. You think I'd get it? So now once I've done that, the console is closed. Let me just show you again. If I go ahead and I open up another console, which I think we're going to do that, I guess. Cool. I'm going to say gluten-free. So this case is important. It has no idea what I'm talking about. But if I was to say, hey, you know what? Grab a piece of memory, call it gluten-free, and set it to 0. And then if I basically said gluten-free, now it remembers it as 0. If I exit, that is, as soon as I push the enter button, this entire piece of memory goes away and it promptly forgets everything. I always kind of make the joke as like students when the course is finished. They just forget everything. All right, so let's go back to files. And actually, you know what? I don't have to do that. I think I still have it. Do I still have it? No, that's something else I think I got left over. All right, well, I'll tell you what, let's close you out too. Oh my goodness, man. All right, another Easter egg for you guys. The lighting's not the best where I'm at right now, but that's fine. Okay, so we get that. Let's go to files, and let's go to chapter 2, and let's go back to you for a minute. Okay, so that's the program. I'm going to run. At this point, there's no variable defined or anything. It hasn't run yet. As soon as I run it, a little piece of memory has been created, and that's and it's going to remember that. All right, good deal. Now, here is something I'm feeling a little dirty about. This variable is of a particular type of variable. It is actually called an integer. And we're going to talk more about this when we tackle the next program, right? Variables, when I'm grabbing a piece of memory, it's probably important for you to remember that it's all stored as numbers in the first place. But in this case, this guy is set as an integer. And an integer, in case you don't know what that is, it's basically a whole number, meaning there's no decimals, and it goes from some incredibly large negative number to some incredibly large positive number. All right. So, and this is one way that some languages will deal with this. They'll basically, when they're trying to say if something's true or false, they'll go 1 or 0. But as the book rightfully does, this is not the best usage of that when this language supports something called a Boolean. And so what I can say here is I can say gluten-free is false. Now notice false became blue. And then down here, I can say, hey, if it's false, then just put the bread in the toaster, otherwise clean the toaster. Right? So it's false. If I set this to true, we see that we have to now clean the toaster and put gluten-free bread in the toaster. So that's actually a Boolean. I would definitely encourage you to look up the concept of Boolean. The book talks about it a little bit, I think, but at the end of the day, you know, let's go to our friend, the Wikipedia here. Actually, go straight to Boolean data type. Boolean itself, that was actually, it's a logic thing, and it's actually named, I can't remember the guy's name. I think it's, yeah, George Boole, right over here, George Boole. So anyway, there's some neat stuff there. But the point is, Boolean is basically, in most languages, it's going to be true and false. And in some languages, it can actually be true, false, or unknown, right? So those, but in Python, it's going to be basically true or false. All right. And that's kind of how we've managed to code this part. And let's see, did I forget anything else here? Yeah. So we're putting bread in the toaster. And then if it's, okay, so if the Boolean free is false. Now, little bit of love for you guys. I think a general good practice is to code for true and then have false as what happens if it's not true. And I think we do talk about decision structures later. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to reverse this. And I'm going to say, hey, if it's true, do this. Otherwise, do this. All right. So the program starts with this guy being gluten-free. We're going to get the bread. You could argue, by the way, we might want to change that too. Like if they're going to get the bread, let's get gluten-free bread. But I'm not going to do that. We're going to run it, and off we go. Good deal. Now if I set this to false. Run it. And now I don't have to clean the toaster anymore. All right. The one last piece of that particular program I want to make sure that you understand is what's going on with this. Do you notice that here I got 1 equals, here I got 2 equals. From this point on, I'm going to use different words for this. This isn't gluten-free equals false. This is gluten-free is assigned false. So this value is assigned, is basically put into that box. When it was 0, that value is put into the gluten-free variable. When a Boolean false is assigned into that box. So a single equals is assigned. Double equals is a question. It's a comparison, basically saying, is gluten-free equal to true? So is it actually equal? If it is, it'll do this. Otherwise, it'll do this. There's a shortcut to this, and that is basically, if you just said if gluten-free, well, actually, one more thing before I say this. This is taken by Python, it's evaluated, and it decides if it's true or not. And then if true, right? So it almost basically becomes this. And the way this is if this was true up here, trolls is on me here. Anyway, so gluten-free is assigned true. If gluten-free is equal to true, this will evaluate, in this case, to true. Now watch what happens if I go if true. Syntactically, it works. It's just fine. If true. Now, I'm telling you that gluten-free is true. So if gluten-free, right? This is going to be basically true, and so then we go run, and so we find out that that we get the clean toaster. It's a shorthand, a shortcut way of typing this. If this was false, we're back to that, right? We're back to the other run, this run. All right, one last thing I should tell you. What if gluten-free didn't exist? And what I'm going to do here, just to save some typing, is I'm going to put 2 G's there. So now this variable is called gluten-free. And when it references gluten-free, it's not going to know what I'm talking about. At least I don't think it will. Right, good. So you get these error messages, right? And by the way, if you're using idle, which I may as well show you an idle, it's a little bit nicer in that the error message is red. All right, but looking back over here, what this guy's saying is on line 5, gluten-free is not defined. So we look at line 5, which has got a very helpful little caution sign up there, gluten-free. So notice, and this is the wonders of programming, guys. I make the change up on line 2, and I don't see the error until line 5. This is why you pay attention to your code and you change your codes very slowly, very incrementally, and you basically pay attention to what you're doing. So I've seen people, do things like this. For example, someone will go through and, this program's going to work now. Let's make sure it works. It's working. And then they'll go ahead and maybe someone will go through and say, geez, why is that F there? And I guess I haven't talked to that yet. And maybe I will in a second. But right now I've changed it to be gluten-free. I'm going to go run. And I'm going, what do you mean gluten-free is not defined? It's defined up here because my poor human brain isn't catching the fact that that's an uppercase F and that's a lowercase f. So be careful with your code. That's basically what I'm saying, because right now, for example, you're looking at my clock down here, it's 10 o'clock. I've had a full day on this, and I'm sometimes I can't even catch these errors. New people, old people, it's the same thing. Just like code very, very diligently and test often. You'll notice that I'm constantly running the program to make sure it's behaving the way I think it's supposed to behave. All right. Because we're going to return to ifs and we're going to return to variables, I think we're probably good to leave it there. Let's just have one more look at this program. So we look at what Sam did. Sam's got a header section sort of where he's basically put comments and said what his name is. That's important, and you should be doing that too. He's got sort of the beginning, a couple print statements, right? Notice he's got getting the slice of bread. He's got gluten-free. Now, when I directly assign it like that, some of you are thinking, I'm sure in the back of your brain, wait a minute, Grant. I mean, what if the person, is gluten-free? Does that mean I have to go back in here and change the program? Go back in here and change the program. In the very next video, we're going to talk to how do you get input from the user, right? So when we actually code stuff like that into the program like that, that's actually called hard coding. So at this point, this is hard coded to be false. If we want to run it again as true, we're going to have to open up the program and change it to true. But really soon, probably not today, because I'm sensing I'm not going to make it, but very soon in the next program, we're going to talk about how we can actually get input from the users. This thing where the capital F is, I should talk a little bit more about that. It is a style of defining variable names. Some people make all variable names uppercase. Some people make all variable names lowercase. You have no choice when it comes to these words, like these commands, like print, if, else, they have to be lowercase. That's part of the language. But when it comes to how you define your variables, in theory, you've got more freedom. But then you got to pay attention to the culture that you're in, right? And so here's what I'm going to tell you. In Python, it's considered good form to use something called Camel Case, where you have the name of the variable, and if there's more than one word, you uppercase the second letter, or even you uppercase the first letter of the second word, and so on, right? You'd uppercase each letter of each word except for the first one. even that isn't necessarily true. And we're going to see in the next program, by the way, that that they do one other thing to the variable to try and communicate to people what this actually is. All right, but that's what's going on with the camel case. One other change here is that Sam put parentheses around it in the if statement. You'll notice back over here, I did not. I don't know necessarily if that's important, but I'll tell you what, there you go. I will do that and it'll work just fine. All right. And I think that is about it. Yep, that's about it. And you'll see that what I did is I kind of differed here with Sam because the only differences I could see is if you were gluten-free, you cleaned it and then you put gluten-free bread in there. If you weren't gluten-free, you put the bread in there. But in both cases, you still push the toaster lever down, and you still print getting toast. So that's why, you know, I said, well, if you what you really should do then is if you have a line like this, putting the toaster lever, pushing it down, if it really is the same thing, I would have it outside of the condition. Indenting, forgot to bring that up, but basically indenting means that this block of code and this block of code, those are basically inner blocks of code. And notice that this print is considered to be outside the if because it's completely left indented. One last thing on the diagram, which I'm not going to code because it doesn't make any sense in this context, but it will make sense in the next program. Wait for toasts to pop up. Well, then what we should do here is basically have something, instead of wait, why don't we change this to a check? Like, I don't know about you guys, but sometimes I don't wait for the toast to pop up. I look in there and I say, hey, is it ready? Is it ready? That sounds like a decision to me, right? That sounds like a decision. So instead of wait for toast to pop up, I'm going to do this. I'm going to basically say, is it ready? Okay, I'm going to take this out. Yank. I'm going to put this over here. And I'm going to connect them. So that's a connection there, and that's a connection there. Is it ready? Now this one, oh, I guess I just lost my action for that. All right, well, that's fine. Well, no, that's fine. We'll leave it like that. Okay, is it ready? And so if the answer is yes, then we get toast. Okay, so let's go copy paste and get that guy, that yes. The answer is yes, it gets toast. What if the answer is no? Okay, so the answer is no. Well, what we would do then is we would leave here. All right, do I got a bend? I do got a bend. I'd leave here. And go back into here. Yeah, I'm pretty excited about this example, but that's okay. We'll do fine. I want you to imagine that what we're doing here is ready is actually like a check, and probably it would be better documented if it was a rectangle like check toast and then if ready. But this here is an iteration, and you'll definitely see that kind of stuff in the in programs, and we're going to see this in the next section. So, but I wanted to show you this is a pretty decent program now. We've got a little bit of a selection, and now we have an iteration. See how this guy will just keep doing this until ready. This is where probably I need people in my class to tell me that I'm not doing this right. Let's move you over. Get up. Oh, you are just going to keep messing me around. That chirping is driving me crazy too. Anyway, right like that. There we go. Okay. Is it ready? Yes, get the toast. No. That should be up here. Yeah, I'm never going to get this done like that. All right, guys. Well, here you go. Get to see how the sausage is made. I'm going to have to have something called check toast for this to make sense. So check toast. All right, check's got some extra thing in there. All right. All right, so check toast. So here we go. Move you down, move you down. And obviously there's one more line in there that I don't need. I'm going to move the check toast thing over. I'm going to take this thing. Oh, see, that's there you go. Oh man, you are just, all right. Hey, that's kind of neat, but I don't want to see the direction of the arrows. The direction of the arrows are definitely not communicating what I want. Okay, right there. Boom, done. Push the lever down, check toast. Is the toast ready? Yes. If not, then what we're going to be doing here is we're going to bring you down. We're going to move this guy out of the way, and we're going to bring him up. And then we're going to go check toast. There you go. I can now go to bed. My life is complete. All right. That looks much, much, much better to me. All right. Get the bread. Is the version gluten-free? Yes. Clean the toaster, put the gluten-free bread in, whoosh, come back down. Push the toaster level. Check the toast. Is it ready? Not yet. Let's go back up and check the toast. Is it now ready? Not yet. Let's go back up and check the toast. And we keep doing this until we check it. Is it ready? Yes, it is. All right, let's get the toast out and end. That is good enough for government work. I'm liking that. So what I would strongly recommend you guys do for both this example and the previous example, if you haven't already, is I would suggest typing these in, getting them running, playing with the text, change your Boolean to true, change it to false, and just sort of watch the flow. Do this in idle, do this in Python anywhere, and the next program is a bit more significant. So be ready for that, and I will see you then.